Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Monday, the 18th of October. I'm Derek Clark. I'm joined by Joshua Barrie this morning. How are we doing this Monday morning, Joshua?
Fine, Derek. Yeah, still thinking about Saturday, and I know we'll talk a lot about it. But I think there's a real feeling around the ground of not just disappointment, but just a little bit apathetic. The fact that there was quite a few positives on Saturday, but they're obviously in line naturally in the conversation topics behind the frustration of throwing away more points. So, as I say, I'm sure we'll get into the what's and the whys.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a reminder, folks, if you're watching us on YouTube, just to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss a video that we post out. Okay, let's get stuck into that Hearts game at the weekend. Joshua, you were there for us watching it unfold. First half was terrific by all accounts. John Lundstrom put Rangers ahead, and then you're thinking they'll kick on in that second half. But they missed a glut of glorious opportunities to stick Hearts away. And it's the old adage, if you don't take your chances, you'll be punished. And that proved to be the case when Craig Halkett nodded home the equaliser very late on. Your assessment of the game, is it another 2 points dropped?
Oh, massively. I mean, often managers say, we could have had 3 or 4 goals, and it's a little bit of an overstatement, but Rangers XG was almost at 4, is by far the highest of the season. Alfredo Morelos, I'm sure we'll touch on him, but his chance from the 8 chances he had, his expected goals in those 8 chances was higher than 4 of the totals that the team had recorded in 8 of their previous Premiership matches. So it was again, it's not one of these games, a little bit like the Motherwell first half. It wasn't a chance even of Craig Gordon keeping them in the game or them holding on. It's just wastefulness, and I do think confidence comes into that. In terms of the inability to finish those chances. Now, Morelos kind of snatched a few efforts, and if Roof's in his position for that game, maybe it ends up 2-3-0. But there was a lot of positives in the first half, and I think as time goes on, people will remember that more, because it was a fast start. Rangers haven't started a game like that really all season. Maybe you could say Malmo at home, but in terms of chance creation, not really. It was fast start. Hearts didn't have, up until 70 minutes, Rangers were sitting on, I think, 2 point something XG, and Hearts had nothing. So if you're looking at that in terms of a home game against a dangerous opponent, in terms of their league position, you're thinking that's a pretty perfect game so far. You're managing to negate their attacking influence. You're managing to create regular chances. But again, it's just a final pass, Derek, and that's kind of the frustration that's been there all season. I put in my match analysis yesterday that bluntly everyone did their job up until the final shot, and that was true. Your Aribos and Hagis, and some of them obviously had chances. Lundstrom was excellent again, just I think a level above actually, and Gerrard said as much after the game. So yeah, the interesting thing now is whether they are able to that continue the upward trend from discovering that form, as Gerrard said again, discovering that level. The fact that they can't keep up for 90 minutes, and that, as you say, they threw away more points, is of complete frustration, because then there's another excellent chance on Saturday. If they go out and just even put in a relatively mundane second half performance, the narrative is so different, and fans have been given more of a performance, but instead there's kind of that shrug of the shoulders, not quite there. But we're in the middle of October now, so it's that can only go on for so long before it becomes the norm. And Gerrard said the second half didn't look like his team, but this season that is what his team has looked like. And until they have a few games where they do dominate teams throughout the entirety of the game, they don't look fragile. I think that will remain in the supporters' mind up until that point.
Yeah, very good morning to Malky, Callum, and also James, who are getting in touch this morning. Hi, guys. You mentioned Morelos, Joshua. I've seen the tail, the whole of the second half, and to be fair, he should have put at least 2 of the glorious chances that came his way into the back of the net. He failed to do so. He just looked like he was devoid of confidence, and he was having just one of those afternoons. If you put one of those away, the game's done, isn't it? And what's going on with Alfredo Morelos?
It's a good question, Derek. And I mean, well, let's look at how Steven Gerrard is reacting to him. I thought Morelos should have come off because Halkett was playing well. With Hearts playing a back three, it meant that Halkett could follow Morelos everywhere. Morelos just wasn't quite there with his performance. He looked frustrated. I thought he slowed down attacks. But Gerrard's kept him on, whether that was a trust thing, whether he wanted to go two central strikers to try and, congest the middle of the park, attack that way. And look, listen, Gerrard's subs Rangers didn't dominate the second half, but they still created 2-3 high-value chances, which should have seen them, win the game comfortably. Whether it was Morelos, they wanted to keep him in for defensive set pieces, who knows? But I don't know. And there's a great piece by Gary Carmody on the site today, which is it's a really articulate kind of look at why Morelos isn't hitting the heights that we know he can, and whether Rangers, his valuation will be as high as the one that Rangers turned down. So you just don't know. But I know Johnny's, who obviously is not with us today, but he's been quite vocal of his criticism, I think it'd be fair to say, of Morelos this season. I've tended to always stray on the side of he's doing more for the team, and he is, but also there was a piece in Gary's piece that said his crossfield passes are more accurate than his shots. And at the moment, that's true. I mean, he had 8 shots, Derek, and none of them hit the target. And when that's happening, and you've got, I know Roofs just went to play for Jamaica, but it's not great, is it? It's not great. So you don't know. Again, the Europa League might spark him into life. Maybe it is just one of those games, but certainly I think it's fair to be frustrated at that. When you're at that game as a supporter, you see those missed opportunities. You're justified in your frustration at a player who can be better. I mean, I know you caught some of it somewhere in an Icelandic or some cafe in the
middle of nowhere.
What do you think of him? Are you as frustrated as Johnny's been at him?
Yeah, the longer the game went on, and the chances were coming, and they were becoming more and more clear cut, there was just that little nagging doubt in the back of your mind, thinking Hearts will get a chance at some point. And there was warning signs. We've seen that Barry Mackay drifting through, but at ease and having a shot at McGregor. He produced a number of great saves before the actual goal itself. So there were warning signs, and they just failed to put Hearts away. And it's not the first time, of course. I've seen Motherwell brought up as a sort of comparison in the post-match press conference. It was pretty much a carbon copy of that game. And Joshua, 15 goals scored in the league this season isn't good enough, is it?
No. And again, you think what is the problem there? I mean, I thought Rangers in terms of, you look at why they want to create central overloads. That first half was a great example because they're able to play quick exchanges and then be through the heart of the opposition, if you'll pardon the pun, and be in good areas. But I also think that allows teams to defend a certain way if it becomes too predictable. And I do think sometimes you just need to vary your approach play with the fullbacks, and I've kind of been banging on about that for a while. But I think, for example, Nathan Patterson in that game would have contributed as well, because when Hearts got back into their 5-4-1, they were hard to break through, and you needed a player to commit a man. Tavernier and Barisic both didn't have great games. Connor Goldson in the first half, thought his distribution was really good, and he played one pass that, I don't know if you remember it, cut out about 4 players through the lines that created a chance. I think it was a Morelos chance. Probably was a Morelos chance. But the thing is, Derek, in terms of 15 goals, you should really be looking at that on Saturday and scoring 3 goals. How Rangers last season, if you look at their goals to expected goals, games like that would have ended up 4-0. 1-0 games sometimes ended up 2-0, 3-0. And that probably is partly to do with confidence. And I guess every time that one of these results happens, that confidence is maybe fragmented a little bit more. It's certainly not as inspiring as it should be. I think Ryan Kent coming back after some time out, I know before he was injured, certainly wasn't having the best season of his career. But he's an excellent player. You could argue when he's on form, he's the best player in the squad. If he comes back and just gives a different dimension, which he will. But if he comes back and manages to hit some form, which I'm sure he will, because he always tends to in the season, I think that'll be a huge positive for the squad. I also think you just need to play Kemar Roofe, because he normally delivers. Even when he was on the pitch, I thought the way he came in and impacted that game, got up to speed quickly and almost scored, is just he's just so good. And I'm a big fan of him, but you can just rely that he's going to create chances. Yeah. I don't think at the moment with Morelos you have that same. You can rely on him in the same way. So it'll be interesting to see what Gerrard does on Thursday. I think he'll go with Morelos again. I think he'll trust him. And Morelos and Tavernier both had bad games on Saturday, but they've both also won a number of games for Gerrard over his tenure. But then loyalty can only last so long before you've got people waiting in the wings like a Patterson and a Roofe, and you have to think, or a Sakala, who we've not even spoken about, who really hasn't, I think, been trusted, I think would be fair to say, or is still being bedded in, which is understandable. But there'll come a point, I think, as well, where he needs to be given a little bit more game time and a little bit more preference, and we'll see if he can return goals, because I certainly think he has that kind of off-ball enthusiasm that can help the team, especially when they're struggling a little bit to create chances.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's touch on other issues from the game. The substitutions that Steven Gerrard made, taking off Hadji and Aribo, replacing them. I think he brought on Stephen Davis, didn't he? And he brought on Janino Bacuna as well. Yeah. What did you make of the substitutions that were made, Joshua? Kemar Roofe was brought on.
Yeah. Roofe, Davis and Bacuna all came on. And Gerrard said after the reason he did that was the Barry Mackay chance comes from Joe Aribo missing a tackle because he's on a yellow card. So you understand that, and you understand, again, it's one of these things whereas if the game goes 1-1 and Gerrard had brought on Sakala, Bacuna and stayed at 4-2-3-1, people would have said, well, why didn't you try to conserve the lead? Why did you be ambitious? Rangers did lose a foothold completely in that game in the second half. That seemed to be an entire drop in intensity. I don't know if you can fix that with substitutions. Equally, you look at the two high-value chances Rangers created in that second half. The first one comes from Davis winning the ball back, or I can't remember for the Roofe tackle, the Roofe shot that hit the post, and for the Morelos miss, the somehow miss. Bacuna, Davis, Roofe were all involved in one of them. So you look at that and you think, well, that's kind of indication again if those go in. I thought Bacuna kind of struggled to get up to the speed of the game. There was a couple of moments where you could see he was a little bit frustrated, maybe at himself. Stephen Davis was brought on in the same way he was brought on the Hibs game to try and pick up intelligent spaces defensively and see the game out. And Rangers, but again, before that Hearts equaliser, they had an XG of 0.4, of 0.25 of which had come from that Barry Mackay chance. So that Barry Mackay chance aside, Rangers hadn't conceded really anything. McGregor made a good stop from Barry Mackay then. But that aside, I think it was working well. The main concern, Derek, for me is the drop in intensity, whether it be that the team just gave so much in that first half and because the strikers didn't take their chance, that it's almost they ran out of fuel, to be terribly cliche. But I don't know if you can fix that with substitutions. Equally, if Sakala comes on, it probably have a little bit more ability to take you up the pitch. The same way, I don't know if you remember against Motherwell, the substitutions meant that really the only pace in the front line was Morelos. I think it was actually Morelos, Bacuna and Roofe as well at the end. That kind of takes the pace out of the attack, allows Hearts to squeeze up that little bit higher. It means that you don't have that threat in behind. And I think that was probably the only decision that lacked, maybe instead of Bacuna. But I guess we will never know the impact it may have made.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan poses an interesting question. Hi, Alan. Morning, guys. Do you think we should get a new striker in January? Now, of course, it's easy to bring that up based on the misfiring that's going on currently. But it's an interesting point, and a lot of supporters will want strengthening in the forward areas when the transfer window opens, Joshua. And they certainly have argument for that. They certainly do, because of the failure to put away chances, and it's costing points. Do you think the Rangers may look to strengthen in January if the current trend continues?
It's a hard one, Derek, because you're not going to go and get someone of better quality than Morelos or Roofe, really, without selling Morelos for big money or getting the Champions League money next season. I think it's one of these things again where it's such fine margins in football, and you see if Morelos, I know it's easy to say, but if Morelos puts that chance away, that he presumably slips with at the end where he puts it wide, it's just a complete different narrative of someone who tried all game and eventually got his reward. And I think that's what the management staff will look at, because they've got to look at everything objectively and reasonably. And Morelos from himself obviously has to hit form, because he's got an individual career as much as he's part of a team that he has to take care of. The concern is that Roofe obviously is now away on internationals, and given his injury record, I think that's just, you can obviously, playing for your country is, I can imagine that a huge honour and a privilege. But I think from a selfish point of view, you do not want Kemar Roofe to be playing unnecessary football games. So I don't know. I guess it all depends on what happens with Sakala as well. But I think what you would say is, objectively, you look at it there, you've got a striker in his prime in Alfredo Morelos who should be doing better than he is and has done better than he is. So you would have the confidence he'll be able to. Fashion Sakala, a 24-year-old who was sought after by teams in the top 5 leagues and scored 16 goals in Belgium. And Kemar Roofe, a player who has a fantastic goal record whenever he scores from Rangers. So objectively, you'd say no. You just hope that it turns the corner a little bit and one of them has a few goals in a row, and I think that will change it. It's also been so disjointed with 3 international breaks, and I think how much has that disrupted the flow of the team? And we've got another one next month, so before Christmas, which must be a record. But let's not think about that just now.
Yeah, good point by Thomas. He says Morelos needs to get his goal-scoring boots on. He was at the Women's League game yesterday for some tips. I've seen a picture of him at the Women's game, which is good to see that players at the men's side going to support the women's team, who are doing really well, top of the league. So long may that continue. Good point here from Callum as well. I think we need a new goalkeeper in January before McGregor retires. Do you agree? For me, yes, he was at fault for the goal, but he can't be blamed for dropping points at the weekend, Alan McGregor, because the game should have been done and dusted before then. But it has sparked a debate this season with John McLaughlin playing a few games and doing really well. Could he pip Alan McGregor as the number one? There is going to come a point when Rangers will have to look to the future. Joshua, do you think they'll have eyes on a possible replacement, or do they have him already on the books in John McLaughlin?
Yeah, I mean, well, John McLaughlin's 34, so he's kind of coming into his prime years as a goalkeeper. You have to imagine, it's hard to know how much of the rotation has been intentional and how much of it has been protecting Alan McGregor from niggles. I don't think McGregor will play cup matches. I think that's probably a given. Again, it was only last season that he had arguably one of the best seasons of his career. Do you know what I mean? But then equally, he's going to be, 40 in January? I think this is very much his last season. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Equally, you didn't hear much, I guess, aggression at McGregor at full time because he saved so many points. And I would say he saved the Barry Mackay chance. Can you remember the last McGregor howler? I can't. So, you just got to accept that and move on. I think Callum's right to pick out the point that the goalkeeper number one position is still uncertain. Robbie McCrory obviously was in the conversation a couple of months ago, but with the return of McGregor and McLaughlin, that's kind of gone quiet. Maybe the club will want to recruit another goalkeeper in the summer. I certainly think this will be McGregor's last season as number one, and then it's probably McLaughlin's to lose. Maybe someone will be brought in to compete with him like he has with McGregor.
Yeah, well, that's a point that John mentions. What do you think of Xander Clark coming in as understudy to John McLaughlin for next season? I wouldn't be opposed to that, Joshua, especially if you can bring him on for corners.
I know. He went up for one in the 2-1 win last month, and terrible deja vu. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to lie and tell you that evaluating goalkeepers is my
forte.
I'm very good at it. I don't know what Xander Clark's numbers have been like last season and this season. You certainly look at his medals and you think that's impressive. I mean, I don't know. I tend to think that the club will prioritise McCrory because they've said as much or hinted as much in that Celtic game. Equally, McCrory had a bad loan at Livingston, but that's not binary that then he's going to turn out poorly for Rangers. So I do think probably the two goalkeepers next season will be McLaughlin and McCrory. Let's not forget, as you've referenced a few times in pieces, McLaughlin has an excellent record for Rangers in terms of clean sheets.
Yeah, it's insane.
And he also, if you look at his goals saved above average last season, in terms of what he was keeping out per game, obviously he played a lot less games than Al McGregor. It wasn't that different from McGregor in terms of saving goals above average. I think his season total on StatsBomb was something like 2.4, and McGregor's was nearly 6. So if you take into account the number of games they played, I do think that he'll be the one next season. I think also you look at McLaughlin and you think, well, he's going into his prime years. He's not going to be sticking around if he's not been promised probably first team football after 2 seasons in terms of a full playing 50 games a season. So yeah, Zander Clark, I wouldn't be opposed to it because again, he's maybe 28, 29, probably before the peak of his career and has been very successful in the last couple of years.
Yeah, he's a decent goalie, and I'm sure he's one that Rangers would be keeping an eye on. Okay, that'll do us there. Thanks again, as always, Josh, and thanks to everyone getting in touch as ever. Remember to hit subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube to never miss a video. And also, we've got that fantastic offer still running at the moment where you can subscribe to the Rangers Review for just £1 a month for the first 2 months and support top quality journalism covering the club you love. We'll be back for another morning briefing tomorrow morning, but until then, enjoy the rest of your Monday.